All right, and welcome back again to the Paisan Sports podcast. As you can see, there is a Christmas wreath behind me. By the way, Paisan Sports podcast is brought to you by Elevation 5280 Sports. Anyway, you're a host.
You finally got some new decorations back there? Because I know you handpicked those two different things. I don't even. What do you even classify those two things on either edge of your screen?
I have no idea what you would call them. I have not handpicked anything that's behind me, but we have a wreath now, which is cool. I like the wreath.
You got the second that Halloween.
I need to get like an actual setup rather than just doing this from my dining room table every week, with the exception of the office somewhere. But anyway, let me get through the intro. God damn it. Dante DePlacido, joined as always by Zach Deal of What's the Deal Sports. So I got to ask, what's the deal with tuna fish? And why does everybody care so much about Matthew McConaughey's recipe? Tuna stinks. Mayo stinks. What's the big deal? I meant to say
where's this trend?
I meant to say tuna salad instead of tuna fish. I kind of botched that because tuna salad is tuna and mayo.
Oh no, I'm not. You didn't.
I find them both to be very disgusting. Granted, I will say this. Matthew McConaughey made the recipe sound quite good. However, both tuna and mayo are disgusting. And when I say tuna, I don't mean all tuna. Like the canned tuna, I think is very disgusting. But if you get like a seared mahi tuna at a restaurant, or you get like some tuna in sushi, those are both very good. But the canned tuna, it's absolutely disgusting, and so is mayo.
Yeah, my dad's a big tuna fish guy, and he uses like the Stardust or Starkist?
Disgusting.
Starkist, and he also uses.
I can't even take the smell of it.
He uses Miracle Whip instead of regular mayonnaise. So I don't like mayonnaise singularly, but I like mayonnaise on sandwiches and stuff. But I don't like tuna. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of chicken salad though, but I also not a fan of like chicken and mayonnaise, but just in that type of creation, I do enjoy it.
Anything with mayo is disgusting. If I go to Wendy's and I order a burger, I always tell them no mayo. The only context in which I enjoy mayo, if it's like an ingredient in a different sauce, like Big Mac sauce, for example.
Well, mayonnaise located is in a lot of things, isn't it? Isn't mayonnaise used in like, I'm pretty sure like Caesar dressing too, like homemade Caesar dressing?
No, not Caesar, but I think it's in like Thousand Island dressing, or it's in another. It's not. I know it's not in Caesar. I'm pretty certain it's not in Caesar. I could be wrong.
All right, so let me ask you this, Dante. Since you started it off like this, I wanted to have more of a sports relevant topic, but you went with tuna salad. So
there's no other. What's the deal? We've already done. What's the deal with the Sixers? They're still a mess. We've already harped on the Cowboys. They're a mess. Who cares? What else are we going to do? What's the deal on besides this tuna salad that everyone is freaking out over about?
Where is this even trending at? Because I'm not on. I think I've logged into TikTok maybe 5 times this entire year.
Oh, it's all over TikTok.
Well, yeah, I don't log into TikTok anymore, so I haven't posted on there in a long time.
Everybody's crazy over this Matthew McConaughey tuna salad recipe.
You're the first person bringing it to my attention.
He was on Bert Kreischer's podcast talking about it.
Oh, that's the dude that drinks a bunch of beer. That's like the comedian, I think.
He drinks a bunch of everything. There's even a
well, that's my experience with him. I think he was like associated with like Joe Rogan or like those type of guys, and I think that's how.
Well, he does a podcast with Tom Segura, and there's one.
Yeah. I think Tom Segura is pretty good friends with Joe Rogan.
Thing of Kool-Aid in the morning.
Oh, I saw that where he had it in the jar.
Yeah. The big like
that's so crazy,
filled with Kool-Aid in the morning.
I couldn't even be drinking on stuff like that. I drink a lot of water. I don't drink as much water as I used to drink, just based off like the stuff that I'm doing now. But I need to cut back on sugary drinks for sure. But I couldn't imagine like sitting there, like when you see people with like the Wawa half-gallon iced teas and they're just sitting there like drinking it from the mouth. You're just like, bro, that's so crazy.
Yeah, it's too much. But anyway, before we get into the Eagles, I actually want to give the weekly fantasy update. Because Dante's Inferno is on their 6th win in a row, putting up 155 points in week 11, thanks to performances from who did I have? Who did I have popping off?
How many points did Joe Mixon get you in the first quarter the other day?
I think it was like 23 after those 2 touchdowns. He finished the night with 35 points. I got 26 points from Jameis Winston, the newest addition to Dante's Inferno. 19 points from Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill finally showed up. 18 from Ertz, thanks to that final drive of that game where they just kept throwing the ball to Ertz, and then he got a touchdown plus a 2-point conversion. 12 points from the Denver defense.
Which you can bet on. I'll offer that as odds. It's called the Octopus.
Oh, Smith-Njigba in my flex, but 22 points. And now, here's the thing. I was very, very tempted to bench Terry McLaurin because I knew he was going up against Quintanamo Bay, who's been locking down corners all season long. And if it wasn't for Chuba Hubbard's bye week, I would have put Smith-Njigba in there instead of Terry McLaurin. That would have been a no-brainer for me. But my second best receiver was Elijah Moore. I thought, is Elijah Moore really going to outscore Terry McLaurin, even with McLaurin facing Quinyon Mitchell? Yes. Terry McLaurin had that 1 catch for 10 yards, so he only put up 2 points. Elijah Moore on my bench put up 18. So I would have had
the stack too. You would have had the stack with Jameis.
Yeah, I was too scared to bench McLaurin because he's been a great receiver all year round.
I don't know if you would take my advice in fantasy, but I do have some leagues that I'm actually good in. Just the one league that is known to the public on this podcast is not going so well this year. But that's tough to say that you would do that though, because we're in a league where depth is like at the premium. So you benching Terry McLaurin regardless of matchup, I don't know if that would have made the most amount of sense. You can look at the hindsight of it now, seeing that there was a player that outscored him on your bench and say that, but realistically, would you have felt confident in benching?
Well, I had it in my head beforehand, so it's not all hindsight. It was an idea of mine. It was an idea I debated myself on. So it's not like unrealistic that I would have benched McLaurin. I almost did. And I have a buddy of mine who he's been raving about the production he's been getting on his team in a different league from Puka Nacua. And I told him straight up, you should bench Puka Nacua this week. I just Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, I mean, they just lock receivers down. If you have a receiver in fantasy going up against the Eagles, don't even start them. They're not going to do anything. None of them are doing anything.
Even like the prime example of that is CeeDee Lamb having 6 catches versus the Eagles a couple weeks ago and netting 20 yards from it.
Yeah, so that's 8 fantasy points.
So it's pretty much like Cooper will allow maybe a reception here and there, but more so it's when they're trying to get him in space and moving around, and he makes the tackle surely right afterwards. And then Quinyon Mitchell barely even allows receptions to be completed anyway. So they just make it so tough on people. Reed Blankenship's playing pretty well, and just like before the season started, we're going to transition to the Eagles talk. Isn't it crazy to think that we would be the most reliant on and feel the most confident in 2 rookies being drafted in the first and second round? And our big free agent, one of our big free agent signings this offseason was a guy that had familiarity in our system in CJ Gardner-Johnson. And he might be 4th fiddle in the secondary right now, just the way that, or 4th or 5th fiddle in the secondary out of the safeties and the 3 cornerbacks. And that's just crazy to think that that's how improved that this unit is.
Yeah, I mean, Gardner-Johnson, he's been looking better as of late. He looked really rough the first 4 weeks. So did a lot of guys. I mean, Nakobe Dean looked very rough the first 4 weeks, and he's been playing phenomenal. One quick note before we get back to the Eagles is Dante's Inferno has now moved up to 3rd place, which is great. I'm on a 6-game win streak, but the guy in the number 1 spot is on like an 8-game win streak, whatever. But anyway, onto the Eagles. So, I mean, it's a great secondary. Even Darius Slay, who I've mentioned, I think is still playing great, and he's not really getting any credit. I don't know why people are acting like he's been so bad this year, but he's playing great as well. Quinyon Mitchell is
the only time I can really remember being like visibly upset with Darius Slay was probably the Tampa Bay game, and that's when he was getting beat, and that's when they had the backup receiver Palmer just kind of cooking him, especially on like simplistic routes that were like slants over the middle for touchdowns and stuff. So I wasn't too pleased about that, but the vice versa effect of that too is when Darius Slay had numerous games in a row where he was getting banged up during the game, but was able to start the game, and they had to replace him. And whenever Keelan Ringo or Isaiah Rodgers had to be out there, then they stepped up and made plays. So just especially one of the plays that was made was that Cincinnati Bengals interception, one of the only times Joe Burrow has been picked off this year, with Isaiah Rodgers creating that interception. So we talked about before the year started, and I actually truly felt that way, that I felt like they needed to just keep James Bradberry around. That was even before he got injured, just for insurance policy. But at this point, I mean, do you even remember James Bradberry being on this roster? He's like the last thing in my thought process when I'm looking at the secondary right now. And that's a guy that this time last year, was seen as like the second most important person in the secondary.
Well, I would say it was the most important person in the secondary because he was the one ruining every possible win for the Eagles, thanks to his garbage plays.
Well, they also, just like, with that being said, they had nothing to turn to last year. Like, he was seen as coming off that year from the Super Bowl year and playing so well. He was seen as like having 2 lockdowns. They had to negotiate. They let Darius Slay, before last season started, go seek a trade if he wanted to, and he barely came back. They made the decision to sign James Bradberry, which ultimately led to C.J. Gardner-Johnson going to the Lions for 1 year and then coming back. So, at this point in time, it felt like it's just crazy, because when I think about it, I'm thinking about like how I felt in that free agency market coming off the Super Bowl year. And I'm like, oh, where could this team turn to if Darius Slay and James Bradberry and C.J. Gardner-Johnson are not together back in the secondary? And then the way the end of last year played out to where we are at now, with not having 2 replacements in there for Darius Slay and James Bradberry, but drafting 2 guys that are at max 23 years old, and Cooper DeJean being 21 years old and making such an impact. And this just doesn't seem like something that's just like trying to throw something at the wall and make it stick. This seems like something that it could seriously lead to like years on of success of the secondary.
Yeah, I think the secondary is very well set up for the future. Obviously, if this is not the last year of Darius Slay, it's the last year of Darius Slay being effective at the very least. So, I mean, I think they still need to find a third corner at some point. But right now, I mean, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean look like they're going to be the backbone of the secondary for many years to come. It's very exciting to see. I don't know the last time the Eagles drafted a corner as good as these 2 guys. I look all the way back to Sheldon Brown and Lito Shepherd for comparison. I think they were in back-to-back drafts, 01 and 02, if I'm not mistaken. And after that, I mean, no corner that they've drafted has stacked up to Quinyon Mitchell or Cooper DeJean. So yeah, I mean, it's very refreshing. Although back in 2017, we thought we had a good secondary for the future. Rasul Douglas was very young. He looked great. Ronald Darby was pretty young. He looked great. Jalen Mills was looking great in 2017. He was young. And then we thought, Sidney, at the time, he hadn't done anything, but we thought he could be part of the future of the secondary. That was a guy, Sidney Jones. So,
real quickly, just to correct you, the 2002 draft, listen to this 2002 draft for the Eagles. So first round, they go Lito.
Second round, they both in 02?
Listen how this plays out. So first round, they draft Lito. Second round, pick 58, they draft Michael Lewis. Second round, pick 59, the pick after they draft Sheldon Brown. And then third round and 91st overall pick, Brian Westbrook. That was their 4 top draft picks in the 2002 NFL draft.
Wow. But yeah, I guess it is kind of similar to 02. But I mean, I can't really speak too much on how good Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown were because I watched them as a child. Well,
that's when they first got them. That was like the insurance for Bobby Taylor and Troy Vincent.
Oh my God, yeah, Troy Vincent.
Two cornerstone lockdown corners, and then they ended up moving on, and then that ushered in the era of Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown. And that was also back then when if you hit on two guys like that and drafting two corners like that, the nickel wasn't as prevalent in that age of football as it is now, where 3 wide receiver sets are like the base norm in the NFL. That just wasn't the way that the league was played. So if you have two corners playing that effectively, the nickel wasn't as big as a concern for teams. So
yeah, so right now, I mean, they have an outside corner of the future and a nickel corner of the future.
Well, that's also, is that the truth though? Because Cooper DeJean, we don't know if he can be an outside corner just yet and how effective he would be.
Well, that's why I said an outside corner and a nickel corner.
Well, I'm saying like maybe Cooper DeJean could be an outside corner too.
Maybe, but I mean, with how well he's playing in the nickel, I think they should keep him there and look for another outside corner. I mean, because he's playing. It's not just that he's playing great in the nickel; he's playing like a great nickel corner. You know, he's doing a great job closer to the box.
For sure like his physicality, like closer to the line of scrimmage and being able to match up with like a little bit more physical of guys, but and he does make it a big impact on the nickel, and he like helps the run game out too when they're in 2 linebacker sets. So that could be the case too. But if they do feel like they can move him to the outside corner, I wouldn't be opposed to that either. If they can find an adequate nickel, I'm not advocating for them to like, move Cooper DeJean to the nickel so they could get a guy or move Cooper DeJean from nickel to outside corner to put a guy like Avonte Maddox in, you know what I mean? But I don't know. Maybe the Darius Slay future replacement is already on the roster in Isaiah Rodgers or Keelan Ringo. So I still hold out a lot of hope.
Ringo, who knows? So maybe their secondary for the future is set, but I have way more confidence in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean than Keelan Ringo and Isaiah Rodgers. But anyway, let's talk about this win against the
Commanders. Quickly. I just have one question real quickly. Cooper DeJean, do you think it's gotten to the point where, especially with Britton Covey, I think they opened his 21-day practice window, so he should be back in the near future. Do you think it makes sense to keep having Cooper DeJean be the punt returner when Britton Covey comes back?
No, for 2 reasons. One, I was starting to like what Covey was doing in punt returns, but the main point is get Cooper DeJean away from returning punts.
Yeah, I think at this point, as much as I want to see him have the ball in his hands and be electric, I just feel like it's a lot of wear and tear on him. So we'll see. I think that's something that will change because I don't really see the purpose of Britton Covey even being on the roster if he's not going to return. You know what I mean? They could use that for a different type of roster spot. So I think that's going to be the eventual change. But I don't know.
I wonder what wide receiver goes to the practice squad now. I wonder if it's going to be Aeneas Smith. If it's going to be Johnny Wilson. My guess is maybe Aeneas Smith with Cooper DeJean returning. I mean, not Cooper DeJean returning, Britton Covey returning.
Yeah, we'll see. Or maybe they denote. I think they actually announced that today. Let me see real quickly.
While you're doing that, I want to see if FanDuel we're going to get to this topic a little while longer, but I want to see if FanDuel has now updated the player props for the Sixers game, because when I checked earlier, it was just Embiid.
I didn't even see Embiid on there.
It was when I checked around 4:30. It was just Embiid and PG. I guess
so. As of right now, with Jeff McClain tweeting earlier, the Eagles have opened the 21-day practice window for Britton Covey, signed defensive tackle Sakai Ika to the practice squad, and released wide receiver Kyle Phillips from the practice squad. So they're ramping him up, but they haven't designated an actual roster spot to activate him to the roster yet. So,
gotcha. So anyway,
but we haven't really dove too much into the actual game on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let's get into the game. Let's get into this game against Washington.
It started off pretty much a signature Eagles game.
Miserable. I was miserable the entire first half.
They start really slow. They don't. It's happened a couple times to where the other team has had a nice opening drive were one of the first opening drives that the team has had. I think it was Austin Eckler got into the end zone.
Yes. Might have been Brian Robinson, but I think it was.
It was one of the running backs got into the end zone. It kind of felt like the way that the game started off and the way that Washington looked in that game. It kind of felt like how the beginning of the Cincinnati Bengals game was playing out on that first drive. They had that really long drive. I think it was like the longest drive in the NFL that year. It was like 16, 17 plays, just going all the way down the field. And they kind of got nickeled and dimed. Their run game was kind of a little bit weak on that drive as well. And they ended up getting the ball punched in, and they couldn't answer in the first half. So they only put up 3 points in the first half. And then they're somehow able to explode for 20 points in the fourth quarter. And on top of that, the 20 points in the fourth quarter, Saquon Barkley had 2 touchdown runs of within like 20 seconds of each other.
Yeah, and they were both like, 20 plus yards each. I mean, that is what Saquon Barkley has really brought to the team, aside from just an improved running game. It's just he's had that home run ability where he can really change a game on its axis, flip a game on its axis, right? I mean, he did it against the Saints. The offense was struggling the entire game, couldn't do anything. The defense was holding strong, but it wasn't looking good. It was like, are we even going to be able to score? And then he ripped off, I think it was a 60-yard touchdown run, and we were able to take over from there and win it. And then, although we had the lead when he scored his first touchdown against the Commanders, it was only a 2-point game. There was still plenty of time left in the fourth quarter. And
they were leaving points on the board, not in the Nick Sirianni typical fashion, but more so of a kicker that they invested a lot of money into.
Which I'm gonna get to that in a minute, but yeah. So I mean, Saquon able to just take over in the fourth quarter and put the game away. And I hear a lot of talk about, he gets stronger in the fourth quarter, he gets stronger in the fourth quarter. I don't think it's that he's getting stronger in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's insane to say that he becomes physically better as the game goes on. I think it's just that he doesn't regress like the opponents do. I mean, he's still.
Or maybe it's not that he gets stronger. Maybe
the opponents are now tired and worn out, and Saquon's still good to go, and he's able to just take advantage of a tired defense because he just doesn't get tired. I think that's what it is. And it's so clutch. Honestly, we've won, I think, 3 games like that thanks to him. Ironically, we lost a game thanks to him, but he's obviously doing far more.
Yeah, I was just going to speak on that too, because I mean, the Bucs game really wasn't close, and there was like no expectation. There's nothing that pointed to the Bucs game once it started that game was ever going to be close, and the Bucs just dominated that game, so that you can't really say there was ever a point in time where they were going to win that game. But yeah,
I would say there was hope. There was hope for a small period of time in that game where the Eagles were about to. It looked like they were about to score a touchdown, which would have cut it to a 1-score game with plenty of time left. But Hurts ended up fumbling the ball, and then it went back to getting out of hand after that.
I mean, this is also the game we're talking about. I think Hurts, like, they went 3 straight 3-and-outs to start that game.
Yeah, it was miserable. There was a small. My point is, at one point there was a little glimmer of hope, but that was it. But I'll let you get back to what you were saying.
No, but yeah, I was just saying. So pretty much, like, the only game that you can really say that they were going to lose was the Bucs game, and that this team should be 9-1. That was just pretty much a game where, and the defense played well in the Atlanta Falcons game. It was really that last drive with Kirk Cousins moving the ball all the way down the field. And then with hindsight now, I mean, Darnell Mooney, I think Drake London and Darnell Mooney have like 711 and 710 rushing or receiving yards this year. So, I mean, Kurt's pretty much doing his thing in Atlanta, and that offense is really good. So that's not the worst loss in the world. So, yeah. I mean, the Eagles are just handling business. And now with the Eagles, it's not like they're just winning games over teams, like how everybody was so upset about the Browns game and how they only won the game by 4 points and it was 20-16 and they weren't clicking on all cylinders. Ever since that point on, it seems like the Giants game, they just like not only have been beating teams that they should beat, but they're also dominating those teams. And then they showed with the Washington Commanders that they can beat a team that is on their caliber, seems like they're on their caliber. Yeah. So I really like the position of the Eagles have put themselves in.
And not only that, like I said about that Browns game, that game was not as close as the scoreboard said, really. In my opinion. Well, like, the Browns got a touchdown from that. What was a blocked field goal?
Yeah, the Rodney McLeod touchdown.
But when you look at how our offense performed versus how their offense performed, I mean, we really outplayed them. But thanks to special teams, ended up being a closer game than it should have been. Same story with the Jacksonville game. That game was closer than it should have been, thanks to shaving points as well as the worst fumble call in the history of the sport. And then when you look at you know what I mean, though. And then when you look at this Commanders game, once again, the offense did a much better job. Even when they were losing, even going into the fourth quarter, the offense did a much better job moving the ball than the Commanders. At one point, when we were still losing, I think we had like 364 yards of offense to like 180 or something like that from the Commanders. But thanks to a bunch of missed field goals and inability to get into the end zone, we were trailing that game. If it wasn't for the missed field goals, we would have. If it wasn't for the missed field goals, we would have had the lead a lot sooner than we did. I mean, it should have been 9-7 for quite a while, but it wasn't because of missed field goals. And then if you look at the final score, we should have had 7 more points than we actually did. And also, in looking at the final score, you can't really count the additional 8 points by the Commanders at the end because that was just a garbage time touchdown. So it really was a game that they dominated despite the
a touchdown they're trying to score and the Eagles were trying to stop them. So, I mean, I definitely think it counts.
They scored the touchdown with 30 seconds left in the game. It was.
It didn't matter to the impact of the game, but it definitely is like a credible touchdown, I would say.
I wouldn't say it's too credible. I wouldn't give him too much credit for it. But the one thing I wanted to get to is maybe Sirianni has had a reason for going for it this entire time, because you look at the performance from Jake Elliott on Thursday night, and you look at how going into that game he was 0 for 2 on field goals over 50 yards. It seems like maybe there's something wrong with him this year. Maybe it's a lingering injury. Maybe he hasn't looked great in practice for whatever reason. But it's starting to seem like maybe the reason they weren't kicking field goals during certain games earlier this year is because Sirianni knows there's something up with Jake Elliott. I mean, that could be skeptical.
Or do you think he's like dealing with a little bit of a confidence issue because he's not getting as many opportunities that he was getting before?
I don't know about that, because like I mentioned, he was.
Well, he also missed an extra point in the game too, right?
He missed an extra point too. He missed 2 field goals. He missed an extra point. I just think
that makes what in the past 5 games that he's played, he's missed, which is half the season of the games that they've played. They played 10 so far. He's missed 4 field goals and 1 extra point.
Let me look at his stats on there. But I think there's just
he's 14 for 19. I know that for a fact. I'm pretty sure he's missed 4 field goals and 1 extra point in his last 5 games.
I think there's something up with Jake Elliott this year. Let me look at stats on this season. He's kicked 19 field goal attempts, and he's made 14 of them, which is a field goal percentage of 73.7, which is tied for the worst of it in his career, tied with that horrible season he had in 2020 when he attempted 19 field goals and only made 14 of them. That year, he attempted 26 extra points and made 24 of them. This year, 26 extra points attempted. He's made 25. But it's very uncharacteristic of Jake Elliott. So I think there's something up with him this year. I think Nick Sirianni has known there's something up with him. That's my theory behind it all, and that's why he was going for it in other games. And I can take my theory even a step further and say maybe Nick Sirianni got tired of all the backlash and threw Jake Elliott out there anyway, with the idea of if he makes the field goals, great. If he misses them, now maybe the fans will get all the way off my back about it. I could be very wrong on all of this, but
I'm more so leaning in a different direction. I think Sirianni's just fallen a little bit too aggressive at times, and he's fallen in love with the tush push and with the success of the tush push and how often they see it as easy to get a first down on fourth down in that position. They're more so inclined to go for it now. I mean, because if Jake Elliott was injured the entire year, there's no reason not to address that and move on to another kicker.
Well, maybe it's not an injury. Maybe it's a confidence issue. Maybe there's just something up with him this year. I don't know if it's exactly.
Well, I also said that could be the thing. Maybe it's a confidence issue just based off of like how often the Eagles do go for it on fourth down now and how they have.
I wouldn't say they go for it a lot because the tush push, most of the fourth downs that they were unable to convert were not the tush push. I mean, they did not.
Oh yeah, not the ones that they don't convert, but they also have a tendency to throw the ball really deep when they only need a short.
Well, that's when it actually works. That's when it actually works. And I saw another team do that this past week on fourth down. They threw it deep and they got a touchdown. I forget what team did that, but I saw somebody do that on Sunday, I believe.
Well, it's usually because teams are like stacking the box to maybe stacking the box more to prevent the runs. So there's more of a one-on-one opportunity out on the outside for a receiver to go make a play. And obviously, the confidence Jalen has in A.J. Brown to go make that play or Devontae Smith. So,
by the way, and then I want to move on to talking about the defense. But looking at Jake Elliott's stats, his 19 field goal attempts in 2020, that was with him playing, and his 26 extra points attempted. That was with him playing an entire season, all 16 games. That really shows how bad our offense was. That after 16 games, he only had 19 field goal attempts.
Well, that was Doug's last year, right? That was when they won 4 games.
Yeah, that's just.
I mean, that team wasn't that team like that. That's what a normal team that's not doesn't have the talent that the Eagles' offense has and doesn't move the ball the way that the Eagles do. That's the amount of attempts in this that you get from your field goal kicker.
And then 2022, he attempted 53 extra points, which was still a lot larger than 2017. With 42. So I mean that offense was rolling. But anyway, on the topic of fourth downs, what is really starting to feel like a common theme for this defense is week after week they're getting a big fourth down stop. It's starting to feel like a weekly thing, and they did it again against the Commanders, which really helped turn the tide in that game.
Yeah, on that play specifically, I haven't seen that many Eagles defenders fly to the ball and actually make a significant stop like that, and I don't know how much time. So, what was it? Zach Bond ended up with the TFL on that play?
Zach Bond delivered the hit, but I think Reed Blankenship deserves more credit for that play. He came flying in out of nowhere.
Yeah, he came in. And really
if it wasn't for Reed Blankenship being involved on that play, Daniels probably could have went left, avoided Zach Bond, and picked up the first down. But Reed Blankenship really forced him towards the sideline where Zach Bond was able to deliver the hit. I think that play was mainly, as much as I love Zach Bond and how great he's been, I think that play was mainly Reed Blankenship.
Yeah, Reed's been doing his thing. I've really come around on Reed Blankenship.
I mean, we both
trust. And anytime that you
Reed Blankenship's biggest haters.
And the thing about Reed Blankenship, it always seems like when they need a timely turnover, he's the one that ends up getting it.
I was talking to my cousin last night about Reed Blankenship, how all of his interceptions have basically looked the same. And I said he is
the dive and curl up on the ball,
I said he is the Nick Castellanos of the Philadelphia Eagles.
The diving catch.
Yeah, Nick Castellanos with that patented sliding catch. Reed Blankenship has a similar thing going with his interceptions. But I was watching bits and pieces of the Barstool stream of that Eagles Commanders game because I wanted to see John Gruden a bit. And Dave Portnoy brought up an excellent point about Washington's decision to go for it, which At the time, I didn't agree with either. When I was watching the game, I was actually hoping they would go for it, right? Because I didn't want them to kick a field goal and take the lead. And I felt confidence in our defense stopping them. And a big reason why, to what Dave Portnoy's point was, they got stuffed the previous 2 plays. It was not looking good for them. It would be a different story if they were moving the ball a little bit, came up a little short on 3rd down. That's like, all right, let's move it a little bit more and let's pick up this 4th down. But no, they had it 2nd and 1. They got stuffed twice. They should not have had the confidence they were going to pick up that 4th down. They should have just kicked the field goal and taken the lead. But for some reason, they were confident in picking up that 4th down when, in my opinion, they shouldn't have been. And the Eagles absolutely stuffed them, which, like I've mentioned, is just a common theme for them at this point.
Yeah, and the game could have played out a lot differently. I think the Eagles maybe would have navigated in a different way instead of playing from behind. They would have had to throw the ball a little bit more. And the success they were having with Saquon in that game, especially in the second half, with him running the ball, especially in the 4th quarter, having 2 touchdowns, that could have made the game script play out a lot differently. So they've had some notable defensive stops this year. They had the one that I thought won them the game was the Nakobe Dean. It was CJ Gardner-Johnson on Bijan Robinson earlier this year. They had the Jamar Chase, Cooper DeJean stop. So there's been some notable signature moments that they've had on 4th down on both sides of the ball. And that's a formula for a team that is going to win a lot of games if you're able to win that down, because that's arguably the most important down, especially even if it's a special teams play. If you can accumulate plays in the special teams, then 4th down is that much more important, because it's a matter of winning and losing. I mean, just look at the way the Bears lost this weekend, getting a kick blocked, and then look at the way that the Chiefs won to preserve their undefeated record versus the Broncos the week before, blocking kicks. And look at how the Browns game turned out, where we just both agreed that the Browns game wasn't as competitive as it was seen in the box score, but one of the big plays that made the score a lot closer was the Browns being able to block the kick versus the Eagles right before halftime. So, but also in that game that preserved the win for the Eagles versus the Browns was the stop that the Eagles defense got on the Browns late in that game to not allow them into the end zone.
Yeah, and I think that was also on 4th down, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just been a lot of great 4th down stops, to the point where not only was I confident because the Commanders had gotten stuffed twice, but just because they've been so good as a 4th down defense this year. And shout out to Jalen Carter. No, not Jalen Carter. It was Jordan Davis on 3rd and 1 who made the play in the backfield. I think Jalen Carter made the play in the backfield the play before that on 2nd and 1. But between the defensive line and between the secondary being great at getting up and making tackles, I mean, this Eagles defense is tough to get past on 4th and short yardage. So let's talk a bit about the upcoming game Sunday night against the LA Rams. How do you feel about Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua going up against Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, aka Guantanamo Bay? That rhymes.
Well, it's kind of like how we were talking about the Phillies this year, and all the topics that we talked about the Phillies pretty much revolve around the same thing every single week, just because that's what it is. And it just seems like having these new corners are so refreshing that we're just going to constantly talk about Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, and the entire secondary, especially in today's NFL, where it's a passing league, and especially when you're going up against 2 wide receivers that are capable of what Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are capable of, and Matt Stafford being the quarterback. And the last time that the Rams played the Eagles, they played them pretty well. So, and I'm pretty sure, was the last time the Eagles played the Rams, that was that last year? It was like week 5 or something. It was right before they lost the Jets, right? And they won by like a touchdown.
I think that was that game.
They were like 4-0 going into the game. I'm pretty sure they ended up.
Hurts threw a deep ball touchdown to AJ Brown in that game, if I remember right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like, if I believe correctly, it was like 31-24, and it was like right before the Jets game, and it was seen as a tough matchup. And that was like before they were fully developed. But also on the other end of it, I don't know if Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are completely healthy this season. So,
well, the Rams have been on a roll lately, and so is Puka Nacua.
Yeah. The Rams have been playing pretty well, but they also they just weren't as competitive in the Vikings game as I thought they were going to be. So, but yeah, the Rams are a team that kind of sneaks up on you. Their defense, they had a lot of overhaul on their defense. They had a tough time developing players for a long time because they kept just shelling out all their draft picks for ready now players that were veterans. And now they're starting to draft guys and draft pretty well. They got the defensive tackle, Kobe Turner. They got Young in the middle as well. Jared Verse, who's seen as like the competition with Quinyon Mitchell for defensive rookie of the year. They signed Tre'Davious White, who's a veteran from the Bills, but I'm pretty sure he's looking for a new home now. So they've had a bunch of guys emerge. Their safety from Miami that they drafted, I think in the second round, Kinchins, is pretty good too. So they got a lot of young players that are making impacts for them. Not the most amount of household names that you would recognize, but if you've been watching the football this year, the Rams probably should be a lot worse on than they are if you're looking at them on paper to how they play. Their offense is very dynamic. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. Really good at play action. They obviously have one of the best play callers in the game in Sean McVay. So I always expect them to be ready when they're led by a guy like Sean McVay, be ready to play football. And they got the playmakers that are out there right now. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a good matchup. Any matchup with these young corners versus somebody that's seen at the top of the game in the receiving game as a Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp. I don't know if Cooper Kupp's the same Super Bowl Triple Crown Cooper Kupp that he once was, but
no, he's not. He's still
one. And I don't know if Matt Stafford's the exact same quarterback as he was, but he's still pretty good. And like I said, the thing that even puts them over the top, even if they are regressing in a way, is Sean McVay's ability to call plays and scheme things up. So they got weapons. They can, like I said, they can get Kyren Williams involved in the run and the pass game. So that might be a matchup to look out for. Kyren Williams matching up with the linebackers in space and how they can get them open. But the thing about Matt Stafford and his receivers he's not going to be shy of getting them opportunities. So we're not going to see a thing where he's like, oh, Quinyon Mitchell's over there, we're not going to throw the ball that way. I actually expect Quinyon Mitchell to probably be targeted the most or up there with the most amount of targets he's going to see this entire year just by the aggressive nature of Matt Stafford.
Yeah, it's going to be a real test for this duo in the secondary. Obviously, in the slot, we have the Cooper Bowl, which is going to be exciting to watch. And then on the outside, you have Nacua versus Quinyon Mitchell. It's definitely going to be a test for them. And I think if they walk out of this game with a similar performance to what they've been doing all year, then I think that really puts the league on notice to just how good the secondary is. I think they already started to put the league on notice with their performance against the Commanders. I thought going into that game, even with how well the Eagles had been playing, they were pretty overlooked in the NFL. I think now after that win, people are starting to notice them more, but I think although the Rams aren't as big of a matchup as the Commanders, I think with this, in terms of the secondary, with this matchup, I think that'll really put the league on notice if they can lock up Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see it. I do like this matchup in general for the Eagles. It's also a road game where they've been playing excellent on the road all season.
Yeah, you know what this game reminds me a lot of is the Bengals game.
In what regards?
It's on the road. It's first a team that is like pretty notable. We know what they're capable of, and they're a team that probably is outplaying their record, but the record doesn't show how good or threatening they might be. And it's also one of the games where, like, if you look at the past couple games, and they're supposed to beat down on these teams, and they're having high spreads against these teams. I think the spread for this game is like -3. I think versus the Bengals, it was like 2.5. That has a lot to do with where the game's being played at. But
yeah, and they've been great on the road. So
yeah, and I think this is a team where they're, the Rams are a very threatening team. Like, I wouldn't be surprised with the Rams, like, maybe not just because of how good the NFC North is this year, but the Rams are the type of team that would like sneak into the playoffs and could actually win a playoff game type team. You know what I mean? So this is like a team where if you look at the last couple of matchups and how they just dominated and they were expected to dominate, I would just be comfortable with just winning this game. And I think it's a pretty
difficult, absolutely,
especially with the matchups that they have coming up with the Ravens and the Steelers. Like, I just want to lead this game. I know it's going to be a tough game, and I don't expect to go in there and blow the roof off the Rams. So I think it's going to be a hard-fought game.
I'd be happy. I mean, I said this early in the year, but throughout the rest of the year, with every single game, I would just be happy with a win. I do not care about winning decisively. Like I've mentioned earlier, we've gotten our blowout wins. Cool, great. You got the blowout wins. You've proven you can blow out teams, which I just think isn't that important in this NFL. But hey, you got that out of the way. Now it's time to just win each game. So
I'd rather win closer games, so I know that I'm battle tested. I'm prepared for the moment.
That's a very good point too.
Like the Lions, like they're blowing everybody out right now, and some of the games are like remotely close, but and they had to come back. They had to come back a couple of weeks ago from a gigantic deficit. But at the end of the day, you want to show that you're able to, work on things in certain areas. You're not able to work on your entire plethora of things that you need to get going for your team to be as complete as possible if you're just always in a blowout and you're not even playing your players.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And a good example of that is look at the Dallas Cowboys. Not this season, but the past couple seasons before that. Throughout the regular season, most of their wins were coming on blowouts against bad teams. And then they get into a playoff game like they did in 2022, if I'm recalling the correct year, the one with the Ezekiel Elliott play at the end. That was a game where they were trailing late. They needed a touchdown. And Dak Prescott had one of the worst set of downs I've ever seen from a quarterback in a playoff game. Because to your point, they were not battle tested. They were just used to blowing out bad teams all season long. So when it came down to it in the playoffs, you're down. You need to get downfield and score a touchdown late in the fourth quarter. Can you do it? The answer was no, because that just was not something they were used to having to do. So I think that's a very excellent point, that it's almost a good thing if they're playing these closer games so that they're used to having to grind it out in the fourth quarter, and they're used to facing adversity.
They dropped 20 points.
Know what to do when they're facing adversity.
They dropped 20 points in the fourth quarter versus the Washington Commanders, but hopefully that's not a recipe that they have to continue to follow, because I do think even though it's not showing itself as an issue now, it's still they need to start the game a little bit faster than they're starting the game, especially offensively, especially being fully healthy too, getting everybody back on offense. So, yeah. Also, real quickly, just some news now. Jalen Hurts was actually thrown onto the injury report at practice today. He was limited practice with an ankle injury, so we got to keep updated on that. Nakobe Dean, groin injury, limited practice. And then players that did not practice, Bryce Huff is actually having surgery on his wrist.
Yeah, so he's out until likely the end of the season.
Yeah, so that's going to hit their pass rush a little bit, and the Rams have spent a lot of money. I think the Rams have, $20 million per year guards on either side, and I think they're getting back healthy, so they've definitely invested in their offensive line. Jalix Hunt also did not practice with an ankle, so that's not only one guy in their pass rush rotation, but two guys, and then to add another guy, Milton Williams did not practice with a foot injury. And to top it off, Devontae Smith didn't practice either with a hamstring. So,
well, it's only Wednesday. Sometimes the injury report looks way worse on Wednesday than it does Friday.
And some of it's precautionary too. Like they're just giving one day off early in the week and then ramp it up towards the end of the week.
They just played the second of a back-to-back. I mean, I'm thinking too much basketball lately. They just played a game off a short week. Which, by the way, I did talk about on last week's podcast, wondering if them not having to play the fourth quarter against the Cowboys would make the difference against the Commanders. I think it did. I mean, they looked so much better in the fourth quarter, and I think a big part of that was they were a little bit more well-rested than the Washington Commanders. I think it played a big part of it. And I also think lay off Jalen Hurts a bit, because he was playing on a short week. And eventually the offense picked it up, but
yeah, I think the Eagles are just overall a big reason why. I don't know if I would point it to just them having the short or not playing in the fourth quarter and then playing on the short week and then having that. I think that might have something to do with it. I just think the Eagles really wore out the Washington Commanders just because of how physical of a team the Eagles are. The Eagles are one of the most physical teams in the entire NFL. Especially when their offensive line is really healthy too.
They have been looking stronger in the fourth quarter pretty much every week. But back to the injury report, I'm not too worried if Jalix Hunt and Milton Williams also don't play, because I think we just have so much depth there, even without Jalix Hunt and Bryce Huff. I mean, you still have Brandon Graham and Nolan Smith and Josh Sweat coming off the edge. They experimented early in the year with putting Zach Baum on the edge, so that's another possibility as well. Maybe you give Jeremiah Trotter Jr. some reps at linebacker and bring Zach Baum off the edge if you need to. So I'm not too worried about that. And then with the defensive tackle position, you also have Moro Ojomo and what's his name, Trevor Booker. I could be using that. I could be thinking of the NBA.
You say Trevor Booker, the
old
power forward on the Sixers back in the day.
But I like Moro Ojomo. And then you still obviously also have Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. So I'm not too worried about that. I would be more worried if it was a more important person on the defensive line, like Nolan Smith, like Josh Sweat, like Brandon Graham, like Jalen Carter, like Jordan Davis. But I mean, don't get me wrong, Milton Williams is a very good defensive tackle, but I don't think it's anything too crazy if he can't play. But like I mentioned, it's only Wednesday, so who knows?
Yeah, more so not like the singular impact that each player can make, even though they're all good players. Jalix Hunt is a little bit unproven, but he's definitely a talented player that's played in the rotation. I'm just more so about the amount of injuries like to a certain position group. You know what I mean? So it will make them short a little bit.
But hey, if Jalix Hunt can play, I'm actually very excited now with Bryce Huff out. Who's going to be out for a while, to see Jalix Hunt get some more reps again. I really like his upside. I think he can do very well. So I'll be excited.
That kind of also clears up. I think they said that Bryce Huff ended up getting injured in the warm-ups for the Jacksonville game. So that kind of clears up why he was playing like limited snaps since that game and in that game as well, because people thought that he could potentially be getting benched, but it was more so injury related. So one last Eagles topic before we move on to the Sixers. Did you see what Madden did today?
Yeah, they added the backwards hurdle.
That's what you call it officially, the backwards hurdle? The Birdle?
The Birdle. Yeah, I like that they added it, but knowing Madden, they're just going to make it so that every running back has the capabilities of performing that move. And
I don't even understand what would trigger that animation, so I don't even know what you have to do to
maybe you have to hit a spin move, and then while he's mid-spin, you have to hit the hurdle. That would be my guess.
Imagine that hit on you, though. Imagine
because they did refer to it as the spinning hurdle, and when you watch the animation from the game, he starts to spin, and while he's backwards, he hurdles. So I think I hit spin.
Dude, isn't it funny how people like it's always cliche to say like, oh, that happens in a video game, but it seems like in real life, crazier things happen in real life than what you can actually replicate.
Oh yeah, I was saying this.
Like you can never make the Odell Beckham Jr. catch in Madden. Like that's not like that's
up until they added it in the game. But yeah, I mean I was saying this to my cousin when the hurdle happened. I said I hate when broadcasters say, "Oh, that's like a video game move," when it's something that like is so out of the ordinary. Anytime something out of the ordinary happens, it's not in a video game because no one had thought of it before.
The video games are pretty much ordinary because they have sets of moves that are used to sequence stuff together. So like it being ordinary would be something that's programmed to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, now there's such thing as video game numbers. I think that's much more appropriate, like what Ashton Genty is doing right now in Boise State. I mean, those are video game numbers. I would have thought a running back can only do that in EA college football. Like when I had a player in that game having a crazy season at running back, I was like, okay, this is too unrealistic. And Ashton Genty is actually putting up bigger numbers than that. So I think video game numbers is much more appropriate than like, you only see that in a video game. But anyway, actually, before we get on to the Sixers, it's time for
I almost forgot, dude.
It's time for my Meatball of the Week. Let me sip of water after that rant. And my Meatball of the Week, I don't know how to pronounce your first name. Sorry. I don't even know if I'm going to pronounce your last name correctly. Goyat. He was a boxer in the opening fight to the Tyson versus Paul event, who he fought an influencer. I don't know. It was a joke. But he was beating him pretty badly the whole fight. And at the end of one of the rounds, he grabbed this man from behind, moved him into the corner, and proceeded to deliver back shots to him. I was watching that fight with my father. We both sat there stunned, in disbelief that we had just witnessed that actually happen. And it wasn't the only goofy butt-related thing to happen all night. I mean, we had the unfortunate sight of Mike Tyson's ass cheeks, which has been all over my Instagram feed ever since. But
I tried telling my friends that happened, and they all thought I was just making shit up and just like trying to be funny and stuff until they saw the video and they're like, "Yo, what's going on?"
Yeah, I caught that live. I was stunned.
When
that happened as
I don't even know.
Well,
he had his He had his cup on. So he had the boxing below the waist protection on with the cup. So I guess that's how he was rocking. So it kind of made sense in a way. But if you don't know anything about boxing, you just be like, why is he wearing assless chaps?
Yeah, it was odd. But anyway, Goyat, you're my Meatball of the Week.
I think we referenced this too. I think you did a Meatball of the Week for the UFC, like sometime in the summer or whatever. And we've referenced how a UFC champion, Israel Adesanya, ended up doing that to somebody after a title fight. He knocked them out. And then while the person was crunched over in like doggy style type position, he ended up humping the fighter 3 times. So adding insult to injury.
These fighters getting freaky out here.
Yeah, it's getting crazy. But yeah, since we were just our last segment, we were talking about video game type numbers. Let's talk about somebody that's not putting up video game type of numbers and a team that is just completely down in the dumps right now. I don't even really know what to say about it. We got internal conflict going on. We don't have anything going on the court. We have one positive thing going on with the Sixers right now, and that's the emergence of Jared McCain. And that's somebody that I've been high on ever since they drafted him and didn't expect him to come on this quickly and didn't expect him to have this opportunity this quickly, especially the way the team is set up. But he's been a pleasant surprise. But on the other hand, the contract with Paul George, even though it's only been 4 games, isn't working out just yet, and Joel Embiid's averaging a career low 14 points and 6 rebounds. So, I mean, where do we even start with the Sixers right now? Like, where do you want to start?
Well, since I'm usually an optimist, we'll start with the positive. We'll start with Jared McCain. I can't tell you the last time I saw a rookie develop this fast. It's insane. It's almost like he's already fully developed as an NBA player, and he's not even a month into the NBA season. I feel
like it happens a lot in basketball where like these highly recruited high school basketball recruits, and basketball, it's even crazier because these guys are one and done. So they go to college, and it wasn't even that long ago that they were like this 5-star prospect or this 4-star prospect. And then over that period of time, just 1 year in college, when the college game is a lot different than what they were doing in high school and what they're going to do in the NBA, because college, I would say, as crazy as it is to sound, the high school basketball is played more so like the NBA than college basketball is, because
college basketball
oriented, you know what I mean? So it's like these guys come out of high school, crazy, highly talented prospects, and then they go to college and might not have the same production as they once showed or show the same flashes that they once showed, and they kind of get slept on. They kind of fall down the draft. We're looking at 2 guys that are playing the best right now, and there's another kid that's in Memphis that the Sixers just played not too long ago that's playing really well. But Dalton Connect, 16th overall pick. And he was a 22-year-old, so he was kind of shied away from because he was a 4-year guy, and they just there's not a big success hit rate on guys that play 4 years in college, especially nowadays. And teams just want developmental pieces, so that's why even a guy that's only a one and done like Jared McCain that might be a little undersized. It's all about those developmental big men and forwards that you can draft in front of them, and that's why these guys slide down in the draft. So I didn't expect him to show up this early, but the reason why I said all that was because Jared McCain was like a pretty known high school basketball prospect who was pretty out there. You know what I mean? A lot of people knew about them, knew how talented he was. Obviously, he was that talented to go to Duke and get a full ride from Duke. And these guys just keep getting slept on. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the same thing with Tyrese Maxey. Went to Kentucky with a loaded Kentucky roster. To get a scholarship to go to Kentucky, you have to be a pretty damn good basketball player. And then they fall all the way down the draft just because they're not the quintessential like 6'6" plus guy that can do everything on the basketball court.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe teams are, just overlooking things in the draft. Thinking I don't know the word I'm looking for, but yeah, I think maybe they're looking for the more prototypical freak athletes who can hypothetically do it all on the court instead of just looking for the most talented players they can find, which going into the draft, going into that draft, it was a very weak draft class. I feel like the only two big names were Zach Edey and Jared McCain. The other guys drafted ahead of Edey, between Edey and Tyrese Maxey. I had never heard of most of them. I'm going to be completely honest with you. And I feel like a lot of people didn't either.
So yeah, at the top of the draft, there was a lot of foreign players that were like drafted very highly in the top of the draft. There was also some good college recruits, but some of the most notable players, it definitely felt like a weird draft. But also, you could kind of sense that like maybe there would be steals in the draft because everybody said it was a historically weak draft, but there was going to be players slipping through the cracks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and also I think what part of it is a lot of people watch college basketball. March Madness, massive tournament, right? No one watches the G League. No one watches Euroball. So with the recent trend of guys starting out in either the G League or over in Europe instead of college, is we don't know who these people are going into the draft because we're not watching them in the March Madness tournament,
Yeah, unless you're like a Luka or like a Wemby, you're not like really being highly profiled like as like somebody that's not playing professional ball or in front of the America market.
Yeah, so it's as of right now, it's looking like Jared McCain is the best player coming out of this draft class. It's very early. We're only not even a month into the first season. You look back at the 2013 draft class. After 1 year, we thought Michael Carter Williams was the best player to come out of that draft class. That was not even close. We thought Ben Simmons was the best player to come out of his draft class, which really, when you look back on it, it's not like there was a clear-cut winner of that draft class, but time will tell. But as of right now, it's looking like Jared McCain is the best player out of the 2020.
Yeah, him and Dalton Knecht are balling. Dalton Knecht had 37 points for the Lakers last night and had like 22 points in a row.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
So he's absolutely balling too. And yeah, it's crazy because the draft, not to spend too much time with the draft, but the last thing I will say about the draft is like scouts are so critical of what tangibles or intangibles. I don't even know what you would consider it. Like, oh, like this dude's undersized or this dude doesn't have enough weight. Like we're looking at like a guy like Trae Young, who said like he doesn't go number one overall because he's like a little bit undersized, or a guy like Chet Holmgren, where there's question marks about him because of how skinny he is. Wemby, there's question marks, even though Wemby was seen as like a generational prospect, but there's questions about him because of his size. And then you see these other guys that get drafted at the top of the draft, and it's all about like, oh, he's got the quintessential size and athleticism, but he's not actually that skilled at basketball. But he looks like he could have a above average 3-point shot. He can do this and he can do that, but he doesn't have that in his game yet. And it's like, why aren't you drafting the players that are just the best? You know what I mean? That actually had the skill traits and can play basketball. And that's like something that Jared McCain, just, that was never the question with him. He always had the skill. It's just about like, he's just a little undersized as a guard. But look at some of the guards that are producing in this league right now.
Yeah, I mean, Maxey's another guy who's undersized.
And the crazy part was, did you see the comparison of Maxey as a starter to McCain as a starter?
Yeah, I did.
I think it's like a difference of like 6 points per game. It's like 27 to 21. But Jared McCain has like 7 assists to like Maxey's like 3.5.
Yeah, well, I think McCain, I think after one game was actually outscoring Max as a starter. I think as a starter, he was averaging like 28 or 30 points per game, but that was with a very small sample size, or maybe 27, something like that. But I remember it being.
Yeah, I think I saw that. It was like his points per game as a starter, like matched up with Michael Jordan's or something, like a tick off of Michael Jordan's or something crazy like that.
Yeah,
so.
I don't know, but I mean, I'm curious to see what the starting lineup looks like tonight, because Maxey is rumored to possibly be returning tonight. Still no word on it, I don't think. But
you know what the big thing about tonight is? It's not even just about Maxey returning, because it's pretty much Jared McCain has carved out this role, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But Kyle Lowry just went down with is going to miss the next 3 games with a hip strain.
Oh,
so that's
I didn't know that. So I mean, that basically secures, I would think.
So even if everybody was healthy, I don't know how they would have navigated if Tyrese came back and Kyle Lowry was healthy. But now there's going to be that open opportunity. And even now, I think Kyle Lowry, he was just more so probably fade into lesser of a role off the bench because of how well Jared McCain's playing.
Listen, if Maxey's playing tonight and we have a starting backcourt of Maxey and McCain, I don't care how bad this team has looked. I am thrilled to get to watch that tonight if we get a Maxey and McCain backcourt. I don't care how bad Embiid looks right now. I don't care how bad the team chemistry is right now. I don't care how bad their record is right now. A Maxey and McCain backcourt. Because think about it, right? You know, before Maxey got hurt, McCain was doing well off the bench, but we hadn't seen what we've seen out of him yet. Since Maxey went down, we've seen McCain absolutely light it up.
Yeah.
So we now know what he's capable of.
Yeah.
So if that means we get to watch that paired along with Tyrese Maxey, who's essentially been, our guy who's been doing what McCain's been doing, the past couple of years, the two of them together in the backcourt tonight, I am thrilled to get to watch that if we get to see that tonight.
I just wonder how they split the volume between all those guys, because Jared McCain, that's been the one thing about him, is he's been efficient, but he's also been a volume shooter. I think he's shooting like 44% from 3, but he's been taking a lot of shots. And that's something that I noticed about Joel Embiid too. I don't know if that's the effect of Jared McCain and Paul George or just the overall team and just trying to get chemistry with each other. But Joel Embiid's actually averaging, I know it's only 3 games, but he's averaging like 12 field goal attempts a game, which is the lowest of his career, even lower than his rookie season. So
yeah, something's up with Embiid.
I don't know what's going on with that. Obviously, there was the report that Tyrese Maxey called out Joel Embiid for being late to almost all team activities. So it just seems like Joel's not in a good space mentally right now, and I actually really respect Tyrese Maxey for doing that, because he knows that he's been there with Joel for the longest. They pretty much built this entire team around Tyrese and Joel Embiid, and for the most authority and like the most serious way for it to be taken possible is not to have your star players go against each other, but to kind of remotivate them and say, like, listen, Joel, like you're the biggest reason where if we're going to go anywhere this year, it's going to be because of you, and we need you to start acting more mature. So what do you think about that situation where Tyrese apparently called out Joel Embiid?
You know what? I mean, I think it's great to hear the report. I think some people hear the report and they're like, wow, Sixers really are in turmoil. You have Tyrese Maxey calling out Joel Embiid, blah, 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 blah. I think that's a step in the right direction. You should look at it as a positive, not as
much as you don't want to hear that there's issues.
That's a good thing. That means Tyrese Maxey is taking leadership. That means Joel Embiid is getting called out on the shit. That means the issues that have been plaguing the Sixers this season are being addressed. That's a very good thing. That's a positive thing.
And you're rather late than ever. I mean, they're 13 games into the season. They're 2-11 right now, tied for the worst record in the entire league. And they're up on mock drafts being the number one team selecting. And for what they've put into this team, um, then, they expect to go somewhere this year. So, um, what do you think about Paul George? He's also not playing too well right now. He's really not. I mean, the only thing that he's really doing that's outside of the expectation is he is assisting the ball a lot, but that should probably change with Tyrese Maxey and the emergence of Jared McCain. But what do you think about Paul George's overall performance so far? It kind of seems like he doesn't really know exactly what to do or what role he's actually playing yet.
I think it'll take some time. You look at how bad the Clippers were when they first acquired James Harden. At what they lose, like 7 out of the first 8 games with James Harden, but eventually they figured it out. They kind of were able to gel together and they start playing better. I think, Paul George, he's new to a team where there's just right now there's just so many different options on offense, whether they've all been working or not. There's just, there's Maxey, there's Embiid, there's McCain, there's Paul George. Although I don't think Paul George has been on the court with Maxey so far. I think he was for a couple games. Yeah,
it was like I'm pretty sure. I think it was 2 games, maybe might have been 1.
So I mean, it's just it's a thing about getting comfortable, figuring out your role. I don't think it's for a lack of talent from Paul George. I think he'll get it going better. I think if this team can gel together with how good Jared McCain has been playing, I think they can really turn the season around. When you look at an elite, if it can be an elite backcourt with Maxey and McCain, plus Paul George playing at his highest level, plus Joel Embiid playing at his highest level, I think this team can start to look really well if they can gel together and everyone can remain healthy.
Yeah, the only thing that kind of frightens me a little bit is they have been getting healthier, and hopefully if they get Tyrese Maxey back, then they'll be completely healthy. But with how well Jared McCain has been playing, it hasn't generated to any team success yet. So that's the one thing that does kind of scare me a little bit. But, they haven't been fully healthy yet. I kept saying that the first couple weeks that the season started, that I wanted to see them fully healthy. But with Paul George and Joel Embiid back, I said that would be enough for them to start winning some games, and it hasn't happened yet. So I don't really know exactly what this team needs to do at the moment. I think they need to figure out roles, and I think the right step is Tyrese Maxey calling out Joel Embiid, so it's known that maybe it's Joel Embiid's team and he should be the leader of the team, but it's everybody's in this together and they need to find a way. And I think their best basketball could be Joel Embiid still dominating. I don't think just because these other players came to Philadelphia, that means Joel needs to stop scoring 30 points a game and stop being dominant in that way and get the ball around to more people. I mean, they've had success with Joel Embiid playing that way in years past. They just haven't had enough to get over the hump. And I think now they have enough talent on the team, but talent is only one thing. They also need to work hard and show up on time for meetings. So.
Yeah, and I think Maxey calling out Embiid is definitely a step in the right direction. I think the most positive thing about that report is that Embiid acknowledged what Maxey was saying. Like, people are acting as if Maxey called out Embiid and then they got into a scuffle. And it's like, wow, they're really in turmoil. No, Maxey called him out, and Embiid, from what the report's saying, Embiid was like, yeah, you're kind of right. I need to do better. So I think, as bad as things have been looking so far, I think in terms of the rest of the season, I think there's more optimism than anything, which sounds crazy to say. But I mean, as someone who is always quick to, be bullish on the Sixers, that's my honest takeaway of it on everything.
Yeah, I just say even with some of the stuff that's been going on, I just couldn't imagine that they would start off 2-11. But what would start to make you feel more comfortable about this team? Like, say they win 3 straight games and they get themselves to 5-11. Do you start to feel like they might be turning the corner, or is it going to take more than that?
It depends how Embiid performs in those 3 games. The 14 points per game, Joel Embiid, if that's the Joel Embiid we see in a 3-game win streak, I still wouldn't be all that confident. I would need to see Embiid start to look like Embiid.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And lastly, before we get out of here, we actually had some breaking news 4 minutes ago, so I didn't want to ruin it for last segment of baseball talk that we were going to do. But Unfortunately, Braves Chris Sale wins the NL Cy Young Award over Zach Wheeler and co. So that's not going to happen for Zach Wheeler. And I'm starting to get a little frightened that Zach Wheeler's just not going to realize that in his career. And it's going to be a lot of really well-pitched baseball just kind of going to waste for him to never be anointed in that way. But it is what it is. Chris Sale definitely had a good year, especially for a team that was riddled by injuries, and he kept them afloat, especially with their top ace out of the rotation. So, but quickly on the baseball front, it seemed like a lot of cold water was poured on the Juan Soto to the Phillies situation until we just got a report that the Phillies do plan on meeting with Juan Soto. They just haven't met with him yet. But Juan Soto is also going to meet with the Dodgers. So how do you feel about Juan Soto meeting with the Dodgers and then Rich potentially getting richer?
I think the fact that he's meeting with us means we have a puncher's chance.
Yeah.
At one point,
I think this is like one of the most open superstar sweepstakes that we've seen. Like if teams like the Toronto Blue Jays are being under consideration, I think it really comes down to money that can really sway him. But I also don't think he's like somebody that's just going to take the bag and run. You know what I mean? I think he's down to be competitive and build a team because he knows how good and valuable that he is. But also money is what's going to sway him. So any team really has a realistic shot outside of like, you know.
Well, yeah, to your point about Juan Soto, I think he's an extremely competitive player. I think you really saw that in the ALCS with his performance, with his plate appearances down the stretch. I think he's a very, very competitive ball player. So I think he's concerned with more than just money. I mean, of course, money is always going to be a main factor with most players, but I don't think that's going to be solely what he's looking at. However, I mean, a team like the Dodgers, who have a lot of money, are also the team that just won the World Series. So there's that. But I mean, at one point, with the reports coming out of, he's only interested in this team, that team, and that team, whatever three teams they were, I forget off the top of my head, the Phillies not being one of them. Part of me was worried, we had zero shot at getting him. But also part of me, and I think I mentioned on the podcast, part of me thought maybe, it's just the reporters just dismissing the Phillies as a possible suitor, which just because I'm used to that kind of stuff happening in Philly sports where we're just constantly overlooked in general. But the fact that he's going to meet with us, I think that's not saying like, oh wow, we might get Juan Soto. It's just, but the fact that he's actually going to meet with us, I think that's a positive sign.
Yeah, his agent Scott Boras, who the Phillies obviously have a lot of history with. He's got history with some players on the Phillies roster, and he's got history with the hitting coach and Kevin Long. So that's a couple different reasons why he could be tied to Philadelphia. If it was me, I would have just traded for him last offseason, but that ended up not happening, and the Phillies ended up needing an outfielder the entire season, and didn't have an MVP candidate on their roster who probably would have been the best player on the roster this year. And you could probably argue with the way that he played this year that he's pretty much the exact same tier that Bryce Harper is as a player. He's that good. So,
well, yeah, and he had his own little bedlam at the bank moment with the Yankees, with that home run that.
And especially with being with, he was seen as the second fiddle to Aaron Judge in New York. He was the one that was carrying the team when the team wasn't getting the performance from Aaron Judge that they expected in the postseason. So,
yeah, he's a clutch performer, and another clutch performer is what this team needs. I think with Juan Soto added to the team, the lineup would be quite scary. So, I mean, I'm just praying we can actually find a way to bring him here.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I also saw some news about some rival GMs expect Alex Bregman expect him to become a Philly. So it's not even just that the Phillies are going to be in the sweepstakes, but they're more so seen as a favorite for the former Astros third baseman. So if that happens and all the traction with that, then that's also under the assumption that they'll probably move Alec Bohm unless they're going to do something crazy and try and move Alec Bohm to first base and then Bryce to the outfield, which I think there's maybe a 0.00005% chance of that happening. So, and a couple teams have called the Phillies about Alec Bohm. So that's news that's popping up on the Phillies radar.
Real quick before we end it, just one final update. Tyrese Maxey still a game time decision, but Nick Nurse has announced that if Tyrese Maxey does play tonight, he will be on a pretty strict minute restriction. So game time decision.
There's no reason to rush him back. I mean, you have all the resources that you should have. The Grizzlies are without Zach Edey tonight, and Ja Morant, so they're missing a couple of their players. So, So it should be a game that they should be able to win with the talent that they're putting out on the court. But I think the last time I checked the money line, what's that?
I said no. Like one would think they should be able to win.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, some of the NBA lines are crazy. Like last night, I bet on the Nuggets plus 200 because Jokic was out. And they were playing. Who were they playing? They were playing another team last night as a plus 200 underdog, and the other team's star player wasn't playing either. I just thought that line was crazy. And we saw the Spurs catch last night too. Plus 385 without Wemby. So, I mean, yeah, we've seen some crazy stuff that's happened. Yeah, the Nuggets played the Grizzlies last night without Ja Morant, and the Grizzlies were like significant favorites, and the Nuggets just clapped them by 10 or 12. And
I got shelled on 2 bets last night. My first bet of the night, I took it. How many legs was this? 9 legs. I took Tatum 25 plus, Mitchell 25 plus, Donovan Mitchell 3 plus threes, Tatum 3 plus threes, Jared Allen 10 plus rebounds, Darius Garland 6 plus assists, Al Horford 4 plus rebounds, and San Antonio Spurs at plus 8.5. Those legs all hit. The one leg that didn't hit, Cavs money line. I thought about taking the spread. They were plus.
Yeah, I mean, that money line was juicy. And I tried to alternate the spread. You know what happened to me that saved me was I had a parlay. So I hit last night on the Grizzlies and the Lakers, and the Lakers were like heavy favorites, and the Grizzlies were like, not the Grizzlies, the Nuggets. So the Nuggets were plus 200 versus the Grizzlies, and the Lakers were heavy favorites. And I went to put the parlay in on DraftKings with the Cavs money line in there because I was going to pair the Nuggets and the Cavs money line both at plus 200 with the Lakers money line to get it to like over plus 1,000. And it capped me out of the Cavs money line because the game had just started and took it out of my betting slip. So it actually saved me.
I actually, when I first made the bet, I first went into FanDuel, made the bet, took Cavs spread at plus 5.5, hit save for later, and then when I went back to it, I changed it to the money line, which I should not have done, or else I would have hit on that bet. It would have paid out over $200 on a $10 bet, and so then it was. But I had gotten a no sweat bet, so when that didn't hit, I said, okay, let me take that $10. Let me place a new bet. Okay, I took Lakers money line. LeBron, 8 plus assists. Anthony Davis, 10 plus rebounds. Lauri Markkanen, over 18.5. Anthony Davis, 25 plus points. LeBron, 20 plus points. I had made that bet, and then I thought, the payout, $10 bet payout's only $47. Let me add one more leg. I had LeBron James, 6 plus rebounds. He finished with 2. All the other legs hit. If I would have just stuck with what I originally was going to place, that bet would have hit. Instead, I went back and I added LeBron James rebounds, and I got.
Dude, honestly, as crazy as it sounds, LeBron's hard to bet on because he's just so like sporadic and random.
He is very sporadic, but
I'll bet him for 20 points at like minus 340, and he'll get me like 16 points. But his rebound line will be like 8 for the night, and he'll have like 14 rebounds. Like the other night, he had like a 19, 16, and 12 like triple double, and you're just like, bro, what is going on here? But That'll wrap it up for episode 73 of the Paisan Sports Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in once again. We will be back next week, hopefully celebrating the Eagles' victory. Maybe we'll be celebrating the Eagles potentially being closer to the number 1 seed in the NFC. Maybe we'll have some MLB news, maybe some trades in the MLB or just some transactions going on. There has been a little bit of movement in the MLB, so we'll see about that. And hopefully the Sixers will rattle off some wins and get us to feel a little bit more confident about their chances this year. So for your hosts, What's the Deal Sports, Zach Deal and Dante, logging off.